I've spent time around veterans, and I can tell you that they're like amazing men and
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
Like the brotherhood and the community and the relationships that are formed, especially formed in trauma. The reality is, this stuff will not, it won't just kill you, but if it doesn't kill you, it'll fuck you up.
We're back with Militainment. Let's talk about 2001, 2002's Pearl Harbor and Black Hawk Down. You had the
I
perfect name for this one.
I watched these two nights back to back, just in my room by myself. And after Pearl Harbor, I texted you and I said, "Here's the tagline for this. This shit, this shit'll kill you."
In case it wasn't blatantly clear with the other movies, which it wasn't, this shit will kill you.
I mean, it's
Uh,
just, yeah, we watched the Transformers movies and the Battleship and then Top Gun Maverick. And as far as propaganda goes, those guys are really good at propaganda because it makes the military and Air Force and the Navy and stuff look cool. And you're like a hero and you're a badass for joining. But Black Hawk Down and Pearl Harbor, as much as there is some badassery happening, this shit'll kill you.
you're right. The other examples, the heroes feel unkillable. I mean, Mav can't go down. Even when he goes down, he can't go down. Whereas with, with these movies, our main characters are like a little bit suspect, at least in Pearl Harbor, a little like suspectingly invincible at moments, whatever.
Yeah,
Black Hawk Down is definitely not the case. Black Hawk
no.
Down is everyone you know is dying. And even Pearl Harbor, the happy ending is how many people die. That
Yeah.
sounds terrible. The happy ending is the glory and legacy that lives on beyond the grave. Okay.
Yes.
Had you've seen both these before, right?
Yes, but with like my teenage eyes and not with like adult eyes.
Yeah, same here. I hadn't watched Pearl Harbor since maybe teen. I think this is only the third time I've seen it all the way through because it was on TV some, but not a ton. And same with Black Hawk Down. I think I watched it for the first time as a teen, and I was like, "Yo, bad." Now I'm like, "No, dead
Mm.
ass, not for
Not
us."
okay.
Let's dig into Pearl Harbor for a second. Pearl Harbor is another Michael Bay film, but I think that this one feels, it still feels Michael Bay, but it feels different at moments. There's some of his key touch points where you're like, oh, I know exactly what he's doing here. But I feel like with Ben Affleck, Josh Hartnett, and just the situation at hand, I think of Michael Bay more with his fantastical stories than his grounded ones, and therefore his grounded one felt a little fantastical at moments.
Yeah, it did. Like it almost felt like at moments Michael Bay cosplaying as like Steven Spielberg.
Yes.
Like the shots of the train and the lighting, like it didn't have a lot of the Michael Bay cinematic moments that like Transformers or Bad Boys or whatever are just like dripping with, right? But it's still very much a Michael Bay film. Like, what is the opening scene with the two kids and they're on the farm and they're like pretending to shoot down Germans or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the kid gives the line of like, "Yeah, America, home of the free, land of the brave." And it's like, oh, right, this is a Michael Bay movie.
This is still Michael Bay being
It's
Michael
like
Bay.
it's unreal.
Yeah, it's interesting because the writer Randall Wallace had written We Were Soldiers, Pearl Harbor. He was a writer on Braveheart, Secretariat. He directed and wrote. In this movie, you're like, okay, the writing is definitely cheesy at a lot of moments. And there are
Mhm.
some deliberate choices, but you're right. It still is a Michael Bay film because he has his moments. He has his when the Japanese fighters are going across the islands of Hawaii. It's, at least in my eyes, the same emotion as the Transformers landing on Earth of like the spiritual
Yeah,
awe. It's for the opposite reason. But
yeah.
it definitely feels like this, yeah, this awe about it all.
I mean, yeah, Michael Bay has a DNA, right? So like the scene where Rafe, Ben Affleck's character, is like begging Kate Beckinsale's character to let him fly and be
Yeah.
like, "Look, I have a dream and it's to be a soldier and do all this stuff. And if you take away my wings," is identical to the scene where Sam
Yeah.
Witwick is talking to his teacher and saying, "Hey, look, I need this much money to buy a car. And if you do this," I was like, Michael Bay only knows how to do like three things, just like once for each movie.
He just stirs it up and he's like, give me the number one. Give me
Yeah.
the number one. You're right. It is weird to have Ben Affleck have the same amount of emotion and stakes as Sam Witwicky wanting his first car. As far as Pearl Harbor goes, how much do you know about the actual event? Have you watched the History Channel stuff, read enough? You are well aware of
Yeah,
it?
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Are you familiar with all the critical slash conspiracy point of views of like all the different aspects of it?
No.
Okay.
Hit me.
There's a few books, and I won't call them out just for the sake of our podcast. There's a few books that point out that they think the entire thing was allowed to let happen to get us into war. And it's almost like we have 9/11 conspiracies. There are a
Wow.
lot of historians who, more seasoned historians call them armchair historians, who have pulled together tons of documents that state that we did know what was happening and that we
Mhm.
put our ships there to be attacked to get us into war because Congress was just denying every single time FDR was like, we got to go to war. They said no. The movie is interesting because these books had already been out by that point. So this was like a talked about thing in the academic space. And it does this weird game of playing with the conspiracy, but also not at the same time. Of
Huh.
FDR's like, oh, we need to be in this war. We need to be there. I really want to be there. It almost leads you to
Yeah.
make your own conclusions, but in muddling, I wish he would have picked one side. Like
Yeah.
either just leaned into conspiracy and have everyone hate him for that, or just talk about it, or
Yeah.
just don't make FDR, well, saying I want to send but out. I don't know. So a weird choice there, at least in my
I mean,
mind.
yeah, it does. Although it's like it's picture perfect Michael Bay because what he does is it's like military, army, navy are good,
Yeah.
government bad.
Yeah.
And so like that definitely came through in this where you've got like some CIA spooks who are like allowing reconnaissance to happen on the Hawaiian Islands underneath their noses while they're like trying to decode messages from the Japanese. And yet, like, oh, you got all these Air Force boys, these Navy boys, and they're good, but somehow the government failed them. And like, that's perfect. That's picture perfect Michael Bay.
And you have that rear admiral continually getting messages from Washington. He's like, they really want us to do this. We shouldn't. They're dumb, but okay, I'll do it. I'll follow orders. And to your
Yeah.
point, it's just this continually pitching military versus government. I mean, like
Yeah.
one last quote about this. The Secretary of War, Henry L. Stimson in 1940, wrote in a message to Congress, he said, the question is not the question was how we should maneuver ourselves so that they're firing the first shot without allowing too much danger to ourselves. So, like, he just openly says, we want to get into war. We just need someone else to shoot first. Totally
Wow.
fine. But the movie still makes it seem a little interesting. And at least for
Mhm.
me, Michael Bay does a great job at making a faceless, emotionless enemy of the Japanese. I'm like, there's
Yeah,
not
he
a
does.
personality among them.
No.
I recognize one of the guys from, oh,
Johnny Tsunami.
no, what's
Because
the
there's two
world?
actors from
Man in the
Johnny
High
Tsunami.
Castle.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
of the guys from Man in the High Castle is one of the Japanese members, Johnny
Yeah.
Tsunami. There's a few of them.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, and I had to go back and read reviews from the time because I was like, I don't want to like have my lens too in here. Roger Ebert in 2001, May 21st or whatever, when the movie came out, he specifically points out, he was like, why is it that the Japanese are saying they're attacking just because of an oil shortage, first off? And second off, there's not a high five or any excitement once they bomb Pearl Harbor. It's
It's just
like,
like, oh no, what have we done?
yeah, he was like, they're the most unwilling villains in all of his cinema to be like, oh, we really didn't want to be the bad guys in this American movie.
It's an interesting question.
Was this a box office move? Were we like selling movies to Japan and we didn't want to piss them off by sending it there with that whole message, like we did with Oppenheimer? I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know the answer, but it is something to question when it comes to militainment of are we still playing it safe with other aspects to not piss everybody off?
Yeah, that's interesting. I did read in the trivia that there are a number of scenes that actually did upset the Japanese
Oh,
in this. Or a couple of them. So one of them was all the Japanese war meetings were outside, and the Japanese were like, "Excuse me, we would never do that. That's barbaric.
yeah.
All of our war meetings are on the inside," and that was like a big deal for Japanese audiences. It was like, "No, we don't do that." And then secondly, which was I thought was funny.
It was fun.
And then secondly, Michael Bay, because I don't think Michael Bay can resist this story element, was them bombing the hospital. That didn't happen. The
Interesting.
Japanese pilots were just like, no, we're just hitting the military targets.
Yeah.
And they left the hospitals fine and civilians fine. And so the Japanese were upset about that as well, which I totally get, because for being unwilling villains on one side to like bombing hospitals, like that's like, I understand why Bay did it from a story element to like increase and heighten the tension and heighten the stakes and stuff. But like, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah, we don't have a Revolutionary War movie where the British are like beheading babies. There's a certain
Yeah.
level of maybe don't take it beyond the reality.
And this is part of like what I think, like, I don't think Michael Bay was the right choice to depict Pearl Harbor. And I
100%.
think the reason being is that Michael Bay loves explosions too much. That when you said the planes flying in over Hawaii just felt a little too spiritual, the attack was too fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially at the end when you get Danny and Rafe in the planes and they're like high-fiving each other, playing chicken with these. But just it felt too triumphant. And especially the music at the end of the attack was too exciting. It was too like French horny as our boys are shooting down some Japanese fighter pilots. I'm just like, this was a catastrophe on every front. We cannot depict this like it's fun.
That's such a good point. That it should have ended on a really low note. And instead he's like, but you know what? Our brave American boys were still out there getting every last one of them. That shouldn't be the gotcha moment. And you're right. The score by Hans Zimmer is fantastic. I think the score outplays the movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is a good point. As far as the like Americana of it all, everyone's pretty moral. Like Ben Affleck's kind of a playboy who immediately reforms when he meets Kate Beckinsale's Evelyn. He's just
Yeah.
like, I'm a good man. Okay, I'm going to be really good. I'm going to be okay, good. But I will say, in remembering this movie as a kid and why my parents were a little iffy on it, or like my older sister was like, that was weird. It's like a weird World War II Challengers. Of you have this love
Yeah,
triangle.
honestly.
And it's weird to me that the story of America getting attacked by the Japanese and entering the war is so punctuated by, yo, I was having sex and loving on this girl and gonna marry her. I died, and 6 weeks later, we don't even know how long it was. Best friend slash brother figure steps in to go ahead and marry her. Then she's getting pregnant. All these like weird things, and by the end of it, he's like, "But guess what? Ben Affleck got the girl again." It's just a weird challengers level like love story. I don't think we needed it. It just felt like a little bit like someone wanted to paint something from their own life, or like a little threesome action going on. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite story aspect. I'm like, we could have lost that.
Yeah, it did. It felt like a lot of different movies all tied up into one. The first hour of the movie is like, it's really just like setting up characters and character development, right? And for backgrounding, I guess, like the Japanese reconnaissance of Hawaii and their plans to attack. But yeah, the love story, I was talking to some friends about it and was like, oh yeah, like it was very romanticized, the whole
Yeah.
thing. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if what was a better way to just create drama and stakes on. I mean, I don't know. We've watched, what was the one with the boys in the planes?
It was the air.
We watched Masters of the Air, and that
Yeah.
created plenty of drama and stakes without needing to like involve love triangles between our two leads, right? So yeah, I don't know if that's a Michael Bay thing or like a '90s thing.
Yeah, part of its time.
Yeah, I don't know.
This movie was like definitely, I remember when it came out, this was like the military Titanic movie. It was like James Cameron 2 years earlier or 4 years earlier, Titanic,
Yeah.
absolutely huge. It was like, okay, Michael Bay's coming in with our favorite big explosion producer, Jerry Bruckheimer, and they were like, we are going to make Titanic about Pearl Harbor. And in
Mhm.
doing so, I think it got some of those cheesy romantic aspects, really terrible writing throughout of just like, what are these lines? Historical inaccuracies.
Yes, there's some lines in there. Like I just can't even like, let's see if I can find one. Let's see. We're building refrigerators where our enemies are building bombs. I mean, that's
Oh,
okay. That's not that bad.
I know,
But
but yeah.
let's see. When they're doing the Doolittle operation and they're on the aircraft carrier headed towards Japan, Alec Baldwin's character, Doolittle, is looking down at Rafe and and Danny on the deck, and he's talking to some guy, and he's just looking at them. He's like, "Them, they're rare." And then he just goes on to like talk to like romanticize how great these volunteers are, and I'm just like, "What the
Yeah.
hell?
Yeah.
Is the military gay?"
You want to know how I know America's going to succeed? Those gay boys right there.
Those little twinks down there.
Those twinks who just can't help but they're sleeping with each other till they sleep with one of them sleeps with their wife. Yeah, it was a lot of that. I mean, Jimmy Doolittle, played by Alec Baldwin, was just a choice because Alec
Yeah.
Baldwin at this point is coming off of he did Hunt for Red October and a handful of Tom Clancy looking films. He did just some really good stuff, and by 2001, he still fit zip Alec Baldwin as Jimmy Doolittle. Every time he's in front of the boys, it's his harsh whisper. And oh my gosh! And guess what, boys? You want to get stuck like a pig? I'm gonna get your butts. It's a little bit just too much. And there's some moments where after the Pearl Harbor attack, I call it like the Garden of Gethsemane moment of everyone's in mourning a little bit. Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? But it flips so quickly to guess what? We're gonna get some butts. We're gonna get some Japanese butts. Get in those planes. It's such a quick turnaround. I was like, we don't even have time to mourn. Cuba
Yeah.
Gooding Jr., who we know barely from the film, he gets in a fight. It's a little racist. Okay, fine. He gets paid. He's a cook, gets on the guns during the actual battle. I remember I looked up as a kid, like, what was true? Some of these characters are based on true characters, but it immediately jumps into a completely different story that could have been a different movie. Like, the
Yeah.
Doolittle Raid could have been its own thing, but it's this militainment idea of we get knocked down, but man, do we get them back and we get them good. I don't
Yeah.
know that I love that we had to end on that note.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely like it's a 3 hour movie. It's a
Yeah.
long movie, right? If this was in the hands of someone who wasn't receiving money from the Department of Defense, it probably would have just ended after the attack on Pearl Harbor and would have found
Yeah.
some like smaller character moment to end on like a hopeful note. But because this is Michael Bay and because he's taking money from the Department of Defense, like it's got to end on like, well, no, like we might get punched in the face, but we punch him right back. But we're gonna do it with like some insanity. I mean, okay, the Doolittle operation was insane. Is how historically accurate was that?
Historically accurate enough. It was insane. And there was and flying off of an aircraft carrier, which should not have been done on these big bombers.
Like landing in China.
That was accurate. Now, here's the thing with the Doolittle raids. Of the 16 crews involved, 14 whole crews returned to the United States or reached safety. The
Wow.
one man was killed while bailing out. 8 men were captured by Japanese forces in eastern China. 2 of the crew members had drowned in the sea. 3 of them were executed. So all but one of the B-25s were destroyed in crashes. The 16th landed in Vladivostok and Soviet Union. Anyways, so they do crash land all over the place. But we're talking about 3 guys executed, 2 drowned, 1 bails out and dies. 6 guys died of 16 crews. That's not that many. I mean, that is still a loss of life. But in the movie, it's like it makes it feel as if Alec Baldwin and Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett are the only ones going, and then it's just Hartnett and and Affleck, and they both go down, and nearly everybody dies. That's not the case. And Roger Ebert in his review pointed out, he's like, there's zero historical context about Japanese imperialism. The number of people leaving my screening who were like, why were they in China? Why were the Japanese in China? Had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Not that there was that whole story to tell, but it was, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, you think that maybe they could have used an ounce of their 3 hour runtime to maybe give some more background and context on what Japan was doing? That's asking for a lot, Tristan.
Just a few less scenes of Evelyn being like, I love you both, but I'm pregnant with his son. We didn't need the paternity test on screen. Didn't really need that. A little more context. I mean, me being an Anglophile and having lived in London, I cringed so hard when they were like, the Nazis are bombing downtown London. I was like, there is no downtown London. What are you even talking about? The American exceptionalism, the militainment in full force, when Ben Affleck's over there and the British officer is like, oh, you Yanks, are all Yanks as excited to die as you are? And he was like, I'm not anxious to die. I'm anxious to matter. And I was like, oh, gross. Like recruitment 101. You don't matter unless you're recruited. No, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's lines like that in Black Hawk Down, which we can get to. Speaking of, and as maybe a good segue before we do our final wrap up on Pearl Harbor, there are some people who were just born to play actors in war movies
Yes.
because they show up in this one and in Black Hawk Down, and I'm just like, are we watching the same cast? Like, what's happening right now?
Tom Sizemore, by the way, is just the perfect military guy. He should be
Yeah.
in everything. But you're right. I mean, even down to Ben Affleck's, to Rafe's dad in Pearl Harbor as being one of the
Yeah.
captains or whatever in Black Hawk Down. Yeah, there's a ton of shared
Well,
ground there.
you get Red with the stutter. You get
Yeah,
Earl, whose hat, like he's in there. Like you get Josh Hartnett, obviously,
of course.
and yeah, I'm just like, some of these guys are only know how to do one thing, and it's to play grizzled American war veterans.
Yep. And they do a good job at it.
And the guy who played Red actually also played a World War One soldier in Wonder Woman. Yeah,
He should loving up all the war movies.
he's all over the place. Yeah, so
Should we go super quick through our criteria?
yeah, let's do it.
Badass lines, tons. I just said my anxious to die, anxious to matter one. I think that's great.
Yes,
That British chap finishes with one more sentence. If there are any more men like you in America, God help, or if there are any more men like you, God help anyone who goes to war with America. I mean, okay, hold on. I'm not going to say Michael Bay and Randall were sitting with Nostradamus, but are they trying to threaten Al Qaeda before 9/11? It's just weird. And I'm sorry, but they have a line in the movie where Danny is on the phone during the attack and he says, World War II's just started. Too many issues there. Never mind. It's too much to deal with. And then
yeah.
the Japanese admiral, he says, I fear all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant. Yes, because the imperialists who just bombed our harbor successfully would be like, oh, all we've done is waken the bad boys.
Is that not a real line? Isn't that a historical like?
It might be a historical line. I just thought it was so cringy. Now I'm gonna have to.
No, I think that it's a real
Oh,
line.
it is a film quote by Admiral. It's portrayed at the end of the 1970 film Tor Tor Tor. Okay,
Oh, so it's a film quote. It's not a real.
it's a film quote from Tor Tor Tor.
Oh,
Now there's a editor of the Wall Street Journal who says you could possibly attribute it to Napoleon, and Napoleon says China's a sickly sleeping giant, but when she awakes, the world will tremble. But I don't believe it's like a real quote from Yamamoto.
okay. Okay. Cool. Then
Thank him.
that is an instance where the movies have altered my interpretation of the real world because I thought that was a real line.
It's now just created history.
Yeah. Cool. Well, and that's the beauty of propaganda. Like it's
It
worked
is.
on me.
Oh boy. What were some of your other quotes?
A lot from the Alec Baldwin. I had the
Yeah,
them.
Doolittle.
They're rare. Like they'll do anything because they're volunteers. I had that one, the British guy who was like, "Oh, if only we had 10 more of you, the world would be so afraid of Americans." I had we're building refrigerators where our enemies are building bombs. And then the kids, and they're like, "Oh, show them that this is the home of the free, land of the brave." Opening line. I'm just like, okay.
Do they lose more than once? If we want to count it, Ben Affleck gets shot down. That's one. Pearl Harbor, if we count the whole thing, is two.
Yeah,
Then
but they
there's
also won at the end of Pearl Harbor because they shot down They shot down 5 Japanese planes and played chicken with them, and the music told me that they won.
See, so it's not even like a full. We couldn't
It's
just
not a
fully
full
lose
loss.
once. Why? And then the final, they're shot down over China, and Josh Hartnett, of course, gets blasted. 2.5 to 3, I'm going to say 2.5 to 3 losses. But in the
Yeah,
end, we still got him. And the point of
still
the
punched
movie at
back.
the end is guess what? You already know what happens with this war. We beat him. Done. Okay. I was
Yeah,
almost just like shocked they didn't show footage of Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end just to like really seal the deal, but I'm glad they
yeah,
didn't.
that would have been a bridge too far. I think. I bet Michael Bay wanted to.
He probably did.
He probably wanted
He
to.
probably did. Is the military instrumental in the final victory? Of course. Are the servicemen moral and good people, or do they have a turn to become a moral and good? Yes. I think they're
Yes,
reform playboys. It's great.
yes. Rafe and Danny are like quintessential American Golden Boys of like from the heartland.
Yeah.
Like they're the American boys you want fighting on your side.
They were good enough. They could have been priests by the time the war was done, but okay.
Yeah,
Stylistic, very stylistic. Hans
yeah,
Zimmer, his score was amazing. Good cinematography. The CGI didn't hold up in certain scenes here or there, but it was,
yeah,
I think, pretty good overall. I don't know.
yeah.
Let's talk about Black Hawk Down.
Cool.
Now for something even more depressing.
Oh, dude. I don't like war movies. that's the hard lesson I'm learning. I don't like them. Like they're just dripping in racism, especially when they come out of America. They're just dripping in racist ideas. And I know that like it needs to portray a historical moment in time, and like I get that, but modern day audiences can't read between the lines well enough for that. And just like so many people die, and yet we're valorizing American goodness and we're valorizing violence and like sacrifice. Like, and we're probably jumping the gun on this, or I'm jumping the gun on this, but like the line at the end, it's about the man next to you.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, but like, what if none of you were there? Then it doesn't have to be about the guy next to you. Like, you don't have to kill anyone. Imagine none of you were there.
Yeah. Imagine we just
So,
didn't show up there.
yeah.
Interesting.
Anyways, this is the movie where I was like, wow, this shit will kill you. Is this an anti, like, I literally wrote down, like, is this an anti war propaganda piece?
What's interesting is there's a lot that happened with this movie. So it got DoD funding. At first, it wasn't going to. It was like all over the place because I had to look up like some of the little trivia quotes, whatever. When this movie was first being made, Americans did not love that Ridley Scott was making it, which sounds funny to me. That was the real issue here, Ridley Scott. Okay. Gladiator, I mean, everything he'd done thus far was not enough. Fine. They didn't want to give them Blackhawks, so he was going to rent military helicopters from Germany that don't even look right. The movie has real footage and audio clips from the battle. Okay, cool, I guess, for historical accuracy. There are just so many damn characters. How close do you stick to the book? You had the actors can't even keep straight who's who, and the audience is not going to be able to. So hence they write their names on the helmets with the
Yeah, I saw
Sharpie.
that.
That's
Yeah.
only for
I was like, that's a filmmaking thing.
that's
That's not a
only for
real
the
world thing.
audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing there for anything else. You had, whether it be Ridley or somebody else, they wrote letters to each soldier so that by the end of filming, the last few days, they were slipped a letter from their character. And at what point are we just reaching out to the dead? But what's interesting is Dick Cheney freaking loved this movie. And if that tells you
Of
anything,
course he did.
that tell you exactly what's happening here. So he and Deputy Defense Secretary Paul Wolfowitz attended the premiere in Washington, D.C., January 15th, 2002. Perfect timing. By the way, there's an article written by the Dissenter that is fantastic because this guy just rips people apart in the article. I'm just quoting from it. Oliver North, the same man who conspired with drug traffickers and armed terrorists in the 1980s Iran-Contra scandal, was present as well, sitting right in front of them. Beautiful cast. And by the time the film finished, Wolfowitz and Cheney were like, this is a powerful film. It's perfect for our time. It reminds people what it's all about. So in their eyes, they were like, this is the call to get Americans to join and go fight terrorism. And I think like what we're watching now, we're both like, this is anti-war. This is
Yeah.
depressing and sad, and I do not want to be part of this.
Yeah, no.
But in that time, they saw it as good for recruitment.
That is so weird to me because just like you take Orlando Bloom's character
Oh
and he
yeah.
just shows up, he's young, like he's just full of piss and vinegar, and he's like, I'm here to kick some ass. And then on his first deployment, he falls out of the helicopter and breaks his back. How is that a recruitment tool?
I just
That just shows how stupid this whole project is that we're doing. We're putting
yeah.
people in danger and then like moving on.
And we removed all context of what was going on. I mean, first off, they gave us a
Yeah.
novella at the beginning, and I'm like, who's reading this? Who's comprehending? And who's going to remember in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Very low numbers. So you strip away all context, all political and historical background to what's happening. And it's just a story of America, the world police showing up to get in shit they shouldn't be dealing with.
Yeah.
And it seems moralistic at times of like, hunger is their weapon, talking about the bad
Yeah.
guys. Hunger is weapon. They're starving. This is genocide. That is true to a point. But at the same time, you have to step back and be like, when are the white boys from Arkansas and Texas not the people to be going in here? And
Yeah.
it leaves a poor taste, at least in my mouth.
It does. And I don't know if this is a movie problem or a real world problem, but like it didn't, apparently there were like the bad guy Somalians and then like the good guy Somalians. And we didn't get any screen time with the good guy Somalians.
Nope.
We like none. And so the only bad guys on film happened to be black. And like the only way that you could really tell the
Yeah.
difference was, besides the uniforms, was the color of their skin. And I'm
Yep.
just like, we shouldn't be making movies like this anymore. Like, that's not okay, because I'm sure that, because I'm sitting there thinking, like, I wonder if these Somalians like are hating, are like so angry at Americans in this movie because of the American military presence, and we're just like stirring up a hornet's nest by our very presence being there, and they just wish that we would go away.
Yeah. And what's interesting is when you look at events around the actual attack on the Black Hawk helicopters, the UN and US did what they do best in just fucking things up. We attacked what's the name of the clan? Haber Gidar clan meeting full of like respected elders. The UN just went and attacked and just murdered most of the people. And so
Gosh.
it's like, okay, again, just color of the skin. There were Pakistani peacekeepers that were there to try and help out. Then that didn't go well. They were attacking there with the UN and the Pakistanis. You have Somali crowds who are just pissed off at Westerners and just like normal crowds folk, like not part of Adin's group, killed
Yeah.
4 Western journalists who were there and killed them because they were like, please just get the hell out of here. We're done with you. You have a whole bunch of massacres, the UN massacres. You have just like really horrible situations. So the Somalians, needless to say, were not very happy about this film, and they have made it known. Both banned and at the time, they were like, hey, UN, please do not allow this to come forward. It's not even accurate to the standards it should be. And everyone's like, no, it's cool.
And so one of the lines in there that also harkens back to Pearl Harbor was, you got Josh Hartnett's character, who is kind of your good guy that's surrounded by a bunch of people who are just like anxious to go in there and fight and fuck things up.
Yeah.
And you get Josh Hartnett's character, who, Josh Hartnett has got these dreamy eyes, and you can just tell that he's a sensitive guy. Like,
He
if
is.
I was
Yeah.
Kate Beckinsale, I would have fallen for him too.
Yep.
And so when you see him amongst all of these like brutish men, you're like, oh, he's different. And
Yeah.
he's there because he doesn't want to fight. He wants to make a difference. And that's his line. He's like, I don't care about the fighting. I just want to, I want to make a difference. I'm like, then dude, join the Peace Corps. The gun in your hand is not going to make the difference you think it's going to make.
Yeah, and I think that we have a character like Grimes, who's played by Ewan McGregor, who's like the coffee
Yeah.
boy, the ranger or office manager, who then is put into the middle of the fighting. And at first I was like, oh, he's going to be us. But he takes to it way too easily and is just blasting people and he's dodging RPGs and grenades. And he's not really us.
No.
He's really doing something different. You have a lot of racist lines that I found, not just racist, but the attitude in which they're said, even if they are true, is demeaning. You have a line where it's like, look, these people have no jobs, no food, no education, and no future. I just figure we have 2 things we can do: help, or we can sit back and watch a country destroy itself on CNN. As if those are the 2 answers. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
have other means of doing things that don't require boots on the ground, blasting, chasing through the city streets.
Yeah.
And one
Yeah.
other quote: nobody asked to be a hero. It just sometimes turns out that way. This is militainment to me. This is our shit's gonna hit the fan. You're gonna die. The idea of no matter what you do, if you're joining the military, this shit'll kill you. And you will be a hero, but this shit'll kill you.
But you'll be dead. And not just you'll die, you'll suffer an excruciating death.
Yeah.
That scene where they're trying to like get the ephemeral artery out of the guy's leg, like I've seen that in Band of Brothers. Like that specific scene
Yeah.
has been depicted in all war movies because it's grotesque, it's awful, it's horrifying. And then you have these guys who are watching their brother die in front of them because they can't get a handle on his ephemeral artery, and then he just slips through their fingers. And I'm like, you want to be that guy?
Yeah.
Do you want to be any of those guys? Do you want to be the guy with his hand up the other guy's leg? Do you want to be the guy with the blood spurting on his face? Do you want to be the guy with the hand up his leg because he can't? Like, what part of that? What part of that is a recruitment tool?
What part of this
Sam?
is desirable?
I'm just like, and that shit's real. That's not a fantasy. Like, people die excruciating, horrifying deaths when they go to war. Okay, you've become a hero, but at what cost? When you could be living a life of peace at home.
Yeah, it's interesting because in this day and age, I don't know who still believes the fairy tale of America, the moralistic peacekeeper, versus America, the oil grubbing, inserting ourselves into things we shouldn't be. Country that, even if it was in the name of peace, we've done a lot of bad things we shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
I would love to have on some veterans. I asked a friend who now works for like, how do I say this? He now works on missions that we can't talk about. So I don't know that he's going to come on if he's listening. Sorry, buddy. But I have other friends that are like in the Marines or otherwise, and I would love to hear from their perspective on why they still were interested in joining and how that was. I had one friend who like recommended watching Generation Kill and Jarhead to me. Those are two fantastic examples of why you don't join the armed forces. And he was like, "Nah, I watched them and I thought this would be something I'm good at." Whoa, okay, I would love to find out more. So
maybe that's the real like the heart of it is you and I are just we're too sensitive boys and we're too soft to go to war. We do not have it in our hearts to do it.
We really don't.
I don't have it in my heart to like I can't do it.
There's a line in the movie from Hoot which goes, once that first bullet goes past your head, politics and all that shit just goes right out the window. And I'm not saying that there's a difference in intelligence or capability. There are some very intelligent people to go to huge schools and everything else and go to the military. But there's something about letting the primal human take over and having that kind of intelligence to let a bullet go by and not overthink or wonder about why she hasn't texted you back or think about anything else. They're just like bullet whizzes. All right, boom, go kill. That's all that matters. And protect the man next to you.
It's all about the man next to you,
not the people whose country you're in.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent time around veterans, and I can tell you that they're like amazing men and women. Yeah. Like the brotherhood and the community and the relationships that are formed, especially formed in trauma. The reality is this stuff it won't just kill you, but if it doesn't kill you, it'll fuck you up.
Yep.
And then you have to be dealing with your trauma for the rest of your life. But the relationships in the brotherhood and the community that it's formed is absolutely real. It's absolutely real because I've seen it in the veterans that I've engaged with, and they're some of the best, most kind, caring, compassionate people like I've ever had the privilege of engaging with. Selfless and just so helpful and willing to do anything for you. It came at a cost. And I don't think that there are any veterans who wouldn't say that, all of this came at a great cost to myself.
Maybe there is something there of the trauma shaped and made everyone grow up who did survive.
Yeah.
And there's just a different attitude about it all.
Yeah.
I mean, we love nuance. We are emotional boys. The nuance of it all is what gets me. You know, you think about like really successful people or presidents who were great people who were also veterans. And there's something there, obviously.
Yeah.
I do wonder, and I wish we could do a study on this, what the psychological effect of a hard and intensive war movie does to actors. Because it sounds stupid. But you think of Band of Brothers or Masters of the Air, or movies like this where they'll actually go to basic training, explosions all over the place, getting into these emotions and really like learning about the character. I wonder what that does to an actor's brain. Because you look at this cast, this absolutely stacked cast, and they've all done different things, but they're all fantastic. Josh Hartnett, Ewan McGregor, Tom Sizemore, Eric Bana, the first Hulk.
A lot of them are British too.
A lot of
this is a lot of British people cosplaying as Americans, and I'm like, what's going on here?
Ridley, why did you make the movie about the American soldiers half British cast? I mean, Jason Isaacs, I think is fantastic. He should have been James Bond. I'm glad we got Daniel Craig, but he's amazing. He is so bad with his American accent. No, you just watched King of the Hill and The West Wing. We have Tom Hardy, a young Tom Hardy in one of his first 4 roles, being one of the gunners there with the redhead kid, Ewan Bremner. There's a really interesting cast of characters, so many people, mostly men, and it's mostly men who are just like having bombs explode next to them the entire movie. I just wonder what it does to the brain.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Couldn't be me.
Nope. I think we know how our answers are going to be at the end of this movie, but let's just do our really quick criteria. Badass lines. Any other lines we haven't covered yet that you loved?
No, I think we've covered them.
I think like the one line that's in my head is, "We won't leave you behind." Everyone says, "I'm not going to leave you behind." It's that feeling, again, like the masculinity talk we had on the last episode. There's this man-to-man love that just can't be rivaled by anything, and this kind of shows it a lot.
Yeah.
Do they lose more than once? Yes.
Yeah, the whole thing is a loss.
The whole thing is a loss. The whole movie's about how we made mistakes and people got shot up and almost everybody died. Are they instrumental in the final victory? Do you call it a victory? Yeah.
Their caravan out of town? Yeah, I guess so.
I will say there's one badass moment in that in which Eric Bana is just reloading his vest to go back in. This man's insane. And
Yeah.
there's something there. Not everyone's like him, but there are some who watch in this movie who would have aspired to be him.
Yeah.
No
A man
one,
who's accepted that he's already dead and he's just
yeah,
a ghost. Yeah.
no man left behind. Are they moral and good people?
As
There's an
far as like
artificial
American Golden
morality.
Boys go, yeah.
Yeah. While watching, I mean, they're calling the Somalians skinnies. And at first I was like, is this just racial? But then in looking it up, and this was again not explained in the movie, so it just feels right. They call them skinnies because in the book Starship Troopers, they call the bugs skinnies.
Oh,
And so this book was widely read during the actual events of Black Hawk Down. And therefore, the soldiers were calling Somalians the skinnies. It'd be like us calling them elites if we were in war during Halo
yeah.
3, whatever.
Interesting. Because I did, when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's racial.
It just sounds like there's unfed Africans. Yeah, this
Yes.
just sounds wrong. But
Well,
there's
that's good to
context
know.
there.
But,
Okay, so
okay,
mostly
cool.
moral people.
Yeah, they're mostly moral people.
Stylistic shots, emotive moments, music,
Yeah.
imagery. This is Hans Zimmer again.
Yeah.
Hans really knows how to pick them. And just for context, the movie had a $92 million budget and grossed worldwide 172. So this wasn't as massive as a hit as I would have thought it was.
Yeah.
But I think it is effective propaganda. And again, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, they loved this movie. And
Yeah.
I would love to know who joined the military after watching it. Like we know Adam
Yeah.
Driver joined right after 9/11 and a handful of other actors, but I would
Yeah.
love to know more from people who joined right afterwards if they saw this and said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to join."
I'm going to sign up for that.
Because that brings us to our final question. Do we sign up with these movies?
It's a big hell no for me, dog.
I'm going to say 90% no on Pearl Harbor. There's 10%. Again, they make it look so cool at certain moments of we can get them back, revenge. But 100% no on Black Hawk Down.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Would I love to be stationed in Hawaii and like wear aloha shirts and go to bars and get in fights and be tan and talk with the nurses? Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to fly a suicide mission across the planet. Like, I don't want to do that.
But you're out of gas. Oops.
I'm going to live.
Also, if we're on that point, Hawaii is once again absent of Hawaiians.
100%.
Other than our Japanese dentist and one ambiguously Asian doctor at the hospital before it gets bombed.
Yeah. It's just a bunch of white people in
It's
Hawaii.
just the whitest whites. Has anyone ever been to this island?
Especially in this time period, it should have been mostly Hawaiians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because this was before statehood.
This was still overtly occupied territory.
Yes, overtly occupied. It's just insanity. Anyways, we should probably maybe we could do a series on Hawaii.
We're going to do a Hawaii. Yes. I'm going to get some Hawaiian historians. I've got Hawaiian friends who can talk about it.
Yeah, and listen to this. Maybe we should go to Hawaii.
Oh, boy.
And record an episode from Hawaii, me and you.
Just the two white guys in Hawaii.
Oh, no.
Maybe we will work on something there.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, because the two white guys are the ones come up with the idea for that one.
It's like every startup and every good LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
All right. We're not joining. We know there will be some who do. We're sorry if you absolutely love the military and love these movies, but we hope if you've been watching or you are going to watch with us, you take another look because this militainment is strong propaganda, but not in the best way.
No, not in the best way. I mean, I'm sure that with the propaganda stuff, it's probably some kind of Faustian bargain that Uncle Sam is doing where there's some percentage of viewers that it's going to work on, but then there's some percentage of viewers it's going to have the opposite effect on.
Yeah.
And they probably know that going in. It's like, no, it's okay. We'll take a 15% opposite effect for like a 60% return.
Here's what I'll say in watching this all with the lens of propaganda. I now know, and in the last few years, I've already felt this in trying to rewatch war movies. I can't watch them as much. Masters of the Air was great, but it was a different angle and aspect and kind of point of view. Yeah. But I tried watching Hacksaw Ridge, and it wasn't enjoyable to watch Hacksaw Ridge. And it wasn't enjoyable to rewatch The Hurt Locker. I have not sat down and finished American Sniper again since it came out in theaters. It's just time for a change. Yeah. On that note, we're going to have a little bit lighter Militainment Watchalong for next week. We've got Iron Man, we've got Captain America, we've got Captain Marvel. So guess what, folks? Put away the Netflix, hide your VOD services. Just head to Disney Plus, the Safe app. Head to
Yes.
Disney for a nice, smiley, military-filled trio of movies about real heroes that are fighting the evilest of evils that don't
Back to
exist.
basics. Back to basics. This will be like putting on a warm, cozy blanket, like an old sweater from my closet, because I just love these movies so
A
much.
warm, cozy blanket, a supersonic suit, the stars and stripes, whatever you
Yes.
need to do. Do it and watch these three movies and take some notes.